And the fight over foreign aid reaching a fever pitch, and the White House is digging in. Good morning. I'm Dana Perino. Bill is off today. Hi, John.
Dana, it's great to be with you. I'm John Roberts, and this is America's Newsroom. The newly appointed special government employee, Elon Musk, leading the charge to reshape bureaucracy. His latest target, USAID, an agency that delivers humanitarian aid. But according to Musk, it's delivering a lot more than that. It's chock full of waste.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking over as acting administrator, and he spoke to Fox exclusively yesterday. He says the agency needs to fall in line.
They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States.
Can it be reformed, or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone, we work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do.
It's not the only agency that DOJ has set sights on. Buyouts for federal workers prompting protests in D.C. The administration is not budging, and the Department of Education could be its next target.
Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa is on deck for us. Madeline Rivera's got the latest on USAID. But first, let's go to Hillary Vaughn. She's on Capitol Hill to kick us off. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, good morning, John and Dana. Well, President Trump promised to audit the government so taxpayers know how every dollar and cent is being spent. And the best way to do that is to go where all the money flows, the U.S. Treasury. But Elon Musk, through DOJ, having access to sensitive payment information at the Treasury, has Democrats warning that he is engaged in a hostile takeover of our country.
To give DOJ a chokehold on Treasury payments is outlandishly dangerous. It's like putting a tiger into a petting zoo and then hoping for the best.
We are living a nightmare created by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and we need to wake up.
Musk says this Democratic outrage is hysterical, and he explains why DOJ needed to get access to payment information in the first place, saying the only way to stop fraud and waste of taxpayer money is to follow the payment flows and pause suspicious transactions for review. This causes those who have been aiding, abetting, and receiving fraudulent payments very upset. Too bad. And now Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who opened the doors of the Treasury Department to DOJ, is being sued. Union groups filing the lawsuit say it's violating their members' right to privacy. Quote, people who must share information with the federal government should not be forced to share information with Elon Musk or his DOJ, and federal law says they do not have to. Republicans say DOJ is just doing the dirty work that no one else has bothered to do in D.C.
Some of the tofu-eating wokarati at the USAID are screaming like they're part of a prison riot because they don't want us reviewing the spending. But that's all Mr. Musk is doing. To my friends who are upset, I would say with respect, call somebody who cares.
So Republicans say Democrats may care that spending is being cut off, but they can't defend the wasteful spending that's actually being cut. John and Dana.
Yeah, well, there's the rub, isn't it? All right, Hillary Vaughn for us on Capitol Hill. Hillary, thank you. Dana?
And Madeline Rivera has the latest on the battle over USAID. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, good morning, Dana. Secretary of State Marco Rubio becoming the new acting director of USAID caps off days of turmoil at the embattled agency. Check this scene from yesterday where protesters gathered outside the USAID headquarters here in Washington, D.C. There are reports of senior officials being put on leave, contractors being laid off. Rubio has since reportedly authorized a review of USAID, and that may lead to a suspension or even elimination of some projects or missions if they don't align with national interest.
This is taxpayer money. It's not my money. It's not their money. It's our money. It's taxpayer money. And we have an obligation, if we're going to do foreign aid, to do it in a way that makes sense.
Foreign aid makes up less than 1% of the federal budget. Supporters call USAID a symbol of American goodwill. They say it promotes national security. But critics argue USAID has been seen as a slush fund doling out money for what they say are wasteful initiatives like $20 million for a Sesame Street workshop in Iraq or reintegration gift bags for deported migrants. A 2019 report found 43% of the agency's awards did not achieve all of their intended results between the 2014 to 2016 fiscal years. Democrats, though, warn dismantling USAID will leave China to fill the void, and they say its shutdown would amount to an abuse of power.
We know that unilaterally closing USAID is illegal. Donald Trump does not have the authority to erase an independent agency created by Congress. Nor can the Department of State absorb USAID, especially because now there's basically nothing left to absorb.
The fallout over USAID is spreading. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz is promising to put blanket holds on all State Department-related nominees. Dana.
All right, Maddie Rivera, thank you. John?
All right, let's bring in Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of the great state of Iowa. What's going on in Washington right now harkens back to your very first campaign ad where you talked about cutting pork. So here's some of the programs at USAID that the White House has got in its sights. $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplace and business communities, $70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. It goes on and on and on. Now, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, says there are a lot of good programs at USAID, but I don't expect any of those are what he's referring to.
Absolutely, John. And I have been on USAID's case for years now, going back several years where I was trying to investigate the expenditures for humanitarian aid, primarily when it came to the war in Ukraine. And what my team and I encountered was absolute obstruction and lies coming out of USAID. They did everything possible to stop me from accessing their records to understand where our taxpayers money was going. I eventually partnered with Representative Mike McCall in the House, and we started a formal congressional investigation. And even after that, they really pushed back, only allowed us access to a small amount of data. But what we found was extreme expenditures on the part of USAID with very little data-driven results. We have seen money funded in the Wuhan Institute of Virology through dollars steered by USAID on dangerous coronaviruses. We saw how that turned out. We've seen funding going to Morocco for pottery classes, tourism in Lebanon, of all places, even when the State Department was advising against travel. I could go on and on and on, John and Dana.
Senator, the Daily Wire reports that 97% of political contributions from USAID employees went to Democrats. And listen here, this is call for three. This is Democrats on Elon Musk's power.
Elon Musk may get to be dictator of Tesla, but he doesn't get to shut down the Agency for International Development.
No one elected Elon Musk to dismantle it.
He doesn't have the power to destroy it.
Privileged billionaires who don't give a damn about America and Americans should not be making decisions that put Americans at harm.
What did they get wrong there?
Well, I think they got just about everything wrong. And so Elon Musk is spearheading the Department of Government Efficiency. And if it means ferreting out waste and fraud on behalf of Americans, then I think he is doing a great job. He is operating at the direction of the president. And what we have seen with USAID is just a blatant disregard for what Americans want to see and how they want their dollars spent around the globe. There are important projects. We acknowledge that, but we have to disrupt this system, ferret out the waste, and get back to what we should be doing. And that's making sure that American interests are represented in supporting our allies and partners.
I'm certainly going through the federal budget with a combine trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. He's just been named a, quote, special government employee. But Donald Trump yesterday tried to assure Elon Musk's critics that he doesn't have superpowers. Listen here.
Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't. But he reports in, and he It's something that he feels very strongly about.
I mean, it's something he feels strongly about because he's used to being in private enterprise. He's used to making miracles happen on very low budgets. But this idea that not everything that he says is going to happen will happen. So are the Democrats overreaching here?
Well, I do think we need change, and the American people spoke to that last November, and this is exactly what we are going to do. It is going to be a very aggressive movement on the part of Republicans, President Trump, and Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. So the Democrats need to get used to this. We are going to find ways to focus our American taxpayer dollars on the things that they should be spent on, which is the American people and our interests. Again, we don't need to be wasting money on ridiculous items like seeing how fast shrimp can run on treadmills. I don't care about that. The American people, they don't care about that. So get ready for disruption. Get used to disruption. Let's get our federal government back on track and doing what we should be doing and not focusing on items of ridiculous ideology.
All right, Senator Joni Ernst, that was great to spend time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always great to see you. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Major wins for the Trump cabinet. The Senate confirming Chris Wright, a former oil executive, to serve as the next Secretary of Energy. 8 Democrats voted in favor. Wright is a vocal supporter of fossil fuels and promoting U.S. energy dominance. The Senate also teeing up a final vote on Pam Bondi's nomination to lead the Justice Department. The former Florida Attorney General faced tough questions from Democrats, but she has maintained full support from Republicans.
They will pay for that if they attempt to shoot at, take shots at, aggressively approach troops or Border Patrol agents. We're not going to stand for it, ever.
Cartels reportedly targeting border agents in response to President Trump's immigration crackdown. Tom Homan on what comes next. Plus, Canada and Mexico both caving to the president's demands on tariffs. Will Beijing be next to pull back from the brink? Meanwhile, crews are pulling the remains of American Airlines Flight 5342 out of the Potomac River. What investigators hope to learn from the wreckage.
The airspace is safe. Air travel is the safest form of travel in the country. We should understand that as a public, but then also demand that we can't stand to have these crashes. These are unacceptable.
Crews are beginning the complex job of pulling the wreckage of the American Airlines plane out of the Potomac River. This after a military Black Hawk helicopter, collided with it last Wednesday. And meantime, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says he does have a plan for the future.
And we've seen cracks in the system, Laura. There's been these near misses continuously reported. That's a warning sign. So let's get more air traffic controllers. Let's upgrade our air traffic control system. I feel really good about where we're at and where we're going and the plans we have in place to make sure we even make the system safer and more efficient than it is today.
The crash killed 64 people on the jet and the 3-person crew aboard the Black Hawk. At least 55 victims have been removed from the river so far.
Well, President Trump and China's Xi Jinping could speak as soon as today amid their trade standoff. Beijing hitting back at the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs overnight. This all comes after Canada and Mexico caved to Trump's tariff threat yesterday. Alexandria Hoff live on the North Lawn with the details. Alex?
Hi, John. Given the rather limited scope of the retaliatory tariffs coming from China, it is clear that there's interest in a dialogue. And the conversation between President Trump and President Xi Jinping expected to happen as early as this week. As you mentioned, John, that could mean today. According to the White House, President Trump's additional 10% tariff on all Chinese goods had kicked in shortly after midnight. Now, in turn, China is promising a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, as well as a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large displacement cars coming from the U.S. That is set to take effect on the 10th. Now, China said it would also launch an investigation into Google to see if it's violated any antitrust laws. That is all if a deal cannot be reached. And this week, President Trump is 2 2 for 3. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing yesterday a 30-day pause on tariffs because, quote, Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. So that security plan coming out of Canada includes appointing a fentanyl czar, designating cartels as terrorists, and launching a joint strike force with the U.S. to fight organized crime. Mexico also agreeing to deploy 10,000 troops to its southern border in exchange for a tariff delay.
The 10,000 soldiers are going to keep illegal aliens out, and they're going to keep them out, seriously out, and otherwise they're going to have a big penalty. Mexico is going to be penalized. They're not going to come through Mexico anymore, and they're not going to let the fentanyl come in from China. And China hopefully is going to stop sending us fentanyl.
Now, the White House has reiterated that this is a drug war, not a trade war. John?
All right, but the drug war can sometimes ignite a trade war, so we'll see what happens. Alex Hoff for us. Alex, thank you. Dana?
Thanks, John. Well, let's bring in Kevin O'Leary, Canadian businessman and chairman of O'Leary Ventures. He comes to us from Tokyo today. More on that in a second. All right, I wanted to ask you about this because President Trump this morning will talk to the leader of China. The Wall Street Journal headline is Beijing prepares its opening bid to talk trade with Trump as White House fires 10% tariff salvo. China sees room to negotiate. Here's what President Trump said about China yesterday.
What I have discussed is we'll have some good meetings with China. We have meetings planned, and we'll see what happens. But that was just an opening salvo. If we can't make a deal with China, then the tariffs will be very, very substantial.
So Mexico and Canada were obviously motivated to try to get to a deal with President Trump yesterday, and they got a 30-day pause. Do you think President Xi is of similar mind?
No, I don't. I think China's a completely unique situation, very different than Mexico, very different than Canada. China, since 1999, when they joined the WTO, has never abided by the rules in any single year, and they certainly don't abide by IP law. And clearly, the fentanyl issue has been outstanding for years. In addition to that, from a manufacturing point of view, a company we all know well, Apple, does a massive amount of manufacturing and job creation there. I think the China deal is far more complex and requires a lot more negotiation than a weekend of just suspending tariffs for 30 days. If U.S. companies never get IP reciprocality, this is an economic war that's unique. It's an AI war. It may become a military war one day. China is just completely different, and I think they need a lot more squeezing than just this. I'm surprised there's only 10%. I thought 400% would be a good place to start. It's just, you can't compare these three situations. They're all different, but China is a big, big, big problem, and I'm not sure this is going to be resolved on a weekend deal.
I didn't know about that de minimis tax loophole that allowed you to buy a lot of things from China under a certain amount of money. That could maybe hurt China, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, there is a law there. The biggest problem is if you manufactured there in the last 20 years, you would find your IP, as soon as the product is proved successful, to be all over the world at a significant discount. It was just stolen from you and manufactured in some cases by the same plant. And then when online sales began, with obviously Amazon and then Alibaba appeared, you could take the product down on Alibaba with IP support from the American legal system, but there is no system in China that you can be reciprocal with. You can't litigate for your IP there. You can't use their court systems. You can't do anything, and I think that's more of the issue. I have a feeling China would like to play with the big boys, be part of the G7. In order to do that, they have to come up to speed with all the rules that the other G7 countries play with. This is probably the beginning of something much bigger with China, and maybe have a good outcome at some point, but we're in the very first innings. I wouldn't say the game's even started. It's not even the first inning yet.
We're just,
because this has put the highlight on something reciprocal.
Wanted to also ask you about this. President Trump talked about the possibility of creating a sovereign wealth fund for the United States, and maybe that would be something to take over TikTok. Watch.
We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth. We're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it. Otherwise, we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund.
What do you think of that idea?
Well, you know, TikTok is really Trump's deal now. If he wants to have ownership of TikTok through a sovereign wealth fund, I'm sure that's fine. The point is, the TikTok deal is a little more complex right now, and I'm pretty close to it. Yi Ming, the designer and founder of TikTok that created the algorithm, the question is, how do you buy the algorithm and still comply with the laws of Congress and the order of the Supreme Court? And that's where I think things are going to get interesting. Frank McCourt and I may have found a way to do that. We have to test it. Obviously, it's going to be oversight. But we've never had a problem raising capital for the cap table. There's lots of interest there. It's, can we get Yi Ming to the table? Will it be a joint venture with the founder and the genius that created the algorithm? Remember, there's been nothing like it. No one ever got that much market share in social media ever, because it doesn't use influencers. When you go on TikTok, it's not about any individual that you're following. You're following content that you like, that the algorithm figured out you enjoy. For me, it's watches and guitars. For someone else, it's something else. But he's going to have to be part of the deal, Yi Ming I'm talking about, and we're going to have to comply with the order of the courts. We'll see what happens here. But sure, if there's a sovereign wealth fund available, they want to put a few billion in, absolutely, 100%.
Just a quick word from you on why you're in Tokyo and stretching new muscles.
I've always believed if you want to stay sharp in your life, spend 30% of your day pursuing things outside of your comfort zone. Being a scripted actor is outside of my comfort zone. I have never had to read and learn this many lines before. And by the way, the producer just changed them an hour ago. I got to learn these lines before 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm working with Timothée Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow. Movie's called Marty Supreme. This is one crazy film. Crazy.
Kevin O'Leary, you're great to join us all the way from there, and good luck on memorizing those lines. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Boy, he has got his fingers in so many pies. President Trump's pick for Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. facing a critical vote today. Soon, the Finance Committee will decide if his nomination advances to the full Senate floor. But not all Republicans.
We believe, and he believes, that border security is national security. It's about time we secure our own border.
The Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth meeting with troops in El Paso, Texas, and vowing to beef up their ranks and resources on the southern border. Hegseth traveled there with Border Czar Tom Homan yesterday. He says the Trump administration will not be deterred in tackling the crisis.
The scale of the invasion that came in under Joe Biden necessitates a big response back. We are not going to back down. Intimidation is not going to work. And the message I have for the troops here is across the board is we have their backs.
Federal authorities have already begun arresting illegal migrants and smugglers in El Paso as part of a nationwide crackdown. Dana?
President Trump's immigration crackdown prompting protests all across the country. The demonstrations were billed as a day without immigrants. Jonathan Hunt has more on the disruptions in L.A. Hi, Jonathan.
Good morning, Dana. For the second day running, protesters caused chaos on some major roadways in L.A. as part of what seems likely to become an ongoing protest movement against President Trump's raids to arrest and deport violent illegal immigrants. On Monday, the protesters, some waving Mexican flags, gathered at City Hall and marched through downtown L.A., marking what they called a day without immigrants. For the daylight hours, police simply watched the protest march, which included families with children who had organized a school walkout as part of the protest. But the families largely drifted away as night fell, and ringleaders seemed more intent on blocking traffic, as they did Sunday when they shut down part of the 101 freeway in L.A. At that point, police declared an unlawful assembly, issued a dispersal order. Some of the protesters followed those orders, others did not, and a number of people were briefly detained. And as arrests of illegal immigrants continue across the country, LA City Council, which formally declared Los Angeles a sanctuary city in November, is set today to consider several new measures designed to help immigrants amid the Trump administration's crackdown. The 5 proposals include requiring businesses to report to the city any workplace raids, audits, or other federal immigration enforcement actions, and a Know Your Rights campaign to inform residents about the protections available to them. On both sides, Dana, this seems to be just the opening salvos in what's likely to be an ongoing battle between local authorities in this sanctuary city and federal agents charged with following through on President Trump's policies.
Jonathan,
Dana?
I just said to our producers, LA can't buy a break after all you've been through, and now this.
Yeah,
Thank you
for
so
sure.
much. John?
All right, Dana, Democrats threatening to hit back at President Trump. New York Magazine with the headline, Democrats may shut down the government to keep Trump from gutting it. The RNC co-chair Michael Whatley is with us now. So Senator Patty Murray said this to Punchbowl News. She didn't really hint too much toward a government shutdown. We'll get to that in just a second. But here's what she said. It's extremely difficult to reach an agreement on top lines in a budget when the president is illegally blocking vast chunks of approved funding, when he's tried to unilaterally shutter critical agencies, and when an unelected billionaire is empowered to force his way into our government's central, highly sensitive payment system at the Treasury Department. I mean, those would all seem to be things that a lot of people in this country voted for, and they're thinking of opposing them.
President Trump ran on and won on a common sense agenda. This is exactly what he has taken over the last 2 weeks, his first steps towards implementing right now. And we're seeing him implement the agenda that he ran on, and it's exactly where we need to be as a country. Look, this is a popular agenda. This is a popular place for him to be. His numbers are very high. Democrat numbers are very low for a reason. The American people want change. The president is bringing change.
On this notion of potentially shutting down the government, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, was asked about that. Listen to this exchange.
Democrats willing to shut down the government if Trump continues to threaten abolishing agencies or cutting funds to programs like Medicaid?
The appropriations process is ongoing. It's our hope to find bipartisan agreement to fund the government to meet the needs of the American people.
If they did try to move toward a shutdown, obviously they'd blame it on Republicans. Is that a winning or a losing issue, you think?
It's a losing issue. I mean, every time the Republicans have shut down the government, they've gotten absolutely crushed. The Democrats would go into the same bucket. Right now, the American people want progress. They want progress on this agenda. They want a southern border that's going to be restored. They want a secure budget. They want to make sure that our economy is moving forward. They want to make sure America is strong enough on the world stage to protect our interests. They want to keep our communities safe. This is what Donald Trump ran on. This is what he's implementing starting on day one.
So the DNC had its big meeting at the Gaylord last weekend where they elected a new DNC chair, Ken Martin from Minnesota. The Democrats do seem to be doubling down on identity politics and things that lost them the election back in November. Here's what the New York Times, this is call for number 4, wrote about the meeting and where the Democrats are headed. We have no coherent message. Democrats struggle to oppose Trump. More than 50 interviews with Democratic leaders reveal the party struggling to decide what it believes in, what issues to prioritize, and how to confront an aggressive right-wing administration. People who are running for DNC chair like Marianne Williamson were demanding a top-down restructuring of the Democratic Party. Martin said, no, we don't need to do that because we've got the right message. It didn't work well for them in November.
No, and what we saw with Joe Biden is they said it's a bad messenger. Then we saw with Kamala Harris it's a bad messenger. The fact is it's a bad message. The American people do not support open borders. They do not support inflationary spending. They do not support a weak America. That's why Donald Trump won. That's why we have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. His agenda right now is getting great reviews, bipartisan reviews. And there's strong support all across this country for a strong southern border, a strong economy, and a strong America. That's why the Democrats right now are in complete freefall. They're imploding as a party because they believe that their message, which is popular with about 20-30% of the country, is going to get them into the majority. It's not.
There was a moment at the DNC meeting that really kind of summed it all up, and it's when Jamie Harrison was trying to tell folks the rules for a vote. Listen here.
On this next ballot, you will be able to vote for 2 candidates of any gender on the next ballot. If 2 candidates receive... I'm going to turn to Helen to clarify this last part.
You may vote for 2 males, 2 females, 2 of any gender, okay? Nope, you can't do that because we've got to balance. You could vote for 1 of any gender, okay? Or no, non-binary gender, excuse me.
Now, if the Democrats don't understand it, how are the voters going to get it?
You know what? I heard one discussion about that after another. What I never heard in that meeting was how do we lower prices? How do we keep our communities safe? How do we protect the southern border? How do we make America better for every family? There was no discussion of any of that. Right now, the Republicans are focused on every family across this country. We're focused on every community across this country. And that's why we really like going into the 26 election cycle with a strong Republican set of candidates.
Yeah, it's 2026 is going to be here before you know it.
Yes, sir.
Michael, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Dana?